Welcome to the possibility and the power of decisions. So, we go in our flow. Let's talk about what it's like to be in their energetic realm of indecision. The bewildered, unsettled, confused. Which way do I turn? What choice do I make? How do I get a grip? Let's
Limbo.
talk limbo, this limbo energy of very disempowered because we're talking about the power of decision. And so the opposite and equal reaction would be the disempowered feeling that comes with the inability to make the decision. And
Yeah.
I guess my curiosity is, where does that stem from?
Yeah. Well, the first thing that comes to mind when you share about that is people pleasing. When we often have a knowing that is very deep, and I know I could speak from my own experience, like I know something, I sense something, I feel something in my being that I want to shift, that I want to decide, but it might impact somebody else in a way that I worry will be negative towards them. So I will stay in confusion, I will stay in limbo to please those around to please those around me. That's one scenario of something that like I've done in the past, and I know a lot of my clients and friends have done
Me too, I'm raising my hand.
have done in the past. So people pleasing. Another reason for indecision is when somebody has felt, whether it's from society, whether it's felt the home that they've been in to, that they've received a lot of no. It's kind of like an injury to their will. They tried to assert their will as a child and they received a lot of no. One of my teachers says it's an example of the balance of frustrating and indulging your children is this real balance, right? You don't want to spoil them so much that they become indulgent or entitled in a way that is not necessarily helpful for society, but you don't either want to overly frustrate them that we injure their will. And obviously, for those listening, good enough parents get it right, quote unquote, and you see me doing quotations 30% of the time. The rest of the time they repair. So don't get too stuck in your heads. But what I will say is that an injury to the will is saying no from a place of ego when you really can say yes. And
Hmm.
that's a way that we can really injure our children. It's like, no, you can't wear that. You have to wear that matching outfit to your brother, as opposed to you can say, no, no, child, you cannot wear a Superman costume to school. But if you want to wear whatever shorts and whatever t-shirt you desire, please wear that. I think that's an example that one of my teachers have given. There's a space where you can not overly frustrate and not overly indulge. But many of us, whether it's because of culture, society, or family have received a lot of no, right? Even in religious environments, I want to dance, I want to sing, I want to express myself. For some people in certain environments, there isn't space for that. Society says no. I want to
Mhm.
dress in the way I want to dress. Society says no. There's so when there's an injury to the will, we can start to feel confused. Confusion is not real. It's a coping mechanism to the pushing down and the pushing down and the pushing down and the injury of what we really desired for so long and isn't allowed to come up. Because if I would have my clarity, that means maybe I would lose a sense of community, a sense of
Hmm.
safety, a sense of identity, a sense of familiarity. So these are some of the reasons why people really choose in some way to stay confused subconsciously.
I'm thinking about ego also in relationship to our own value system that we set in place that sometimes holds us hostage. And just the other night, I was walking and I met a friend on Eastern Parkway, and she just got really emotional. And she was telling me, I just need a break. I need a break. I need a break. And I really want to go spend time with my father. He's getting older, and I want this for myself, and I need this for myself. And I was like, wow, you have such clarity about what you need. What's standing in the way? She's like, well, I asked them at work, and they don't see why that's necessary. And they're being very strict about the time that I can take off. And they're always like that. And it sounded like there was this pattern of being trapped in a job that she doesn't really love.
Mm.
And that's also holding her back from what she knows is a deep need for her, which is spending quality time with family, which is what she needs for her mental and emotional and spiritual well being. And then when we continued talking, she said, but I'm not a quitter.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, that's where it's at. We have this value that our ego holds that actually holds us back from the gut soul knowing because I can't quit. I can't make that decision for myself because that would be something that's going against a value that's very important to me. But I was like, don't you see in some way that holding that value as the highest, in the highest regard, is actually keeping you from the thing that your soul wants the most, which is irreplaceable? A
Yeah.
job is replaceable. Time with family, especially old parents, you will never get this time back if you don't take it for yourself. And if it means losing your job right now, sometimes that's what needs to be chosen. But can you choose yourself, right? Am I going to stay here and be a victim of someone else's decision for me about how much time and I could have off? And not to take away respect from businesses and honoring your time, but she's worked in this company for many, many years.
Yeah.
And it's not such a stretch to allow somebody the time that they need. And ultimately, it gives more to the company than ever before when I honor the things that the people that work for me need. That's a side note, but I don't want to take away from that, or because I respect people's boundaries in business. I have a business and I respect boundaries in business. And there is this place where it's, am I going to choose the ego aspect of myself, which says we don't quit?
Mhm.
Or am I going to choose the self that is me, that is my soul, that is desiring this irreplaceable and never can get back time with your father?
Yeah.
And that's the decision. That's the decision. So the fear to the fear of letting my ego down, right? Because I'm going to quit something here, but ultimately to choose the higher self.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what you're describing is one of the facets of the frustrated coping style, which Dr. Sam Rader, who's writing an amazing book right now, she talks about these different kinds of people who hold this coping style. And all of those people who have this way of coping or this defense mechanism all have injury to their will. And one of them is
Mhm.
that I'm not quitting, I'm resilient, I'm responsible, a bit of like martyrdom, right?
Mm.
Can't, stuck, hard, feeling like a victim, whether consciously or subconsciously,
Yeah,
with
she used the word trapped, and I was like,
trapped,
whoa,
stuck.
whoa.
Or whenever we feel that way, or whenever we see someone else feel that way, we can know that they're in this frustrated defense mechanism. Why does
Mm.
someone have this frustrated? Why are we not always just choosing and deciding and putting our stick in the sand and moving forward and allowing things to flow? Because when we are frustrated or we feel stuck, it's because as a child, there was a lot of no. There was a lot of frustration. Again, whether it's from society or culture or our parents or just even inside of ourselves. I want to be creative. No. I want to be excited. No. I want to swim and jump and play. No, you have to sit at your desk for 8 hours a day. There's so many ways in which people have felt trapped as little ones. So the acknowledgement of, wow, it was hard. You were stuck. It
Mm.
was challenging could be very helpful to them move into. But now I am an adult with the power to decide. And I think that if you still feel stuck and you still feel trapped, this is a really great tip. It means that you might have not validated the hard and the stuck and trapped of your childhood enough. And if
Mm.
you can really sit at the edge of the hard and grieve and mourn, or maybe even get angry about the hard, and then learn, oh, you're actually allowed to say no. You're actually allowed to push back. You're actually allowed to assert your will. You're actually allowed to have a knowing. And then we don't live anymore as a shrine to our past pain subconsciously. We're continuing to perpetuate patterns that we don't even realize. Subconsciously, what we're saying, it's like an inner FU. Like what we're saying is, life treated me so awfully. So now I'm not going to let myself get the thing that I really want.
Right.
And that's really what we do instead of acknowledging and feeling what we might have been through. So, touching on that martyrdom, I think a lot of people who might be listening to this will resonate with. I want something, but wanting something makes me feel like I'm not grateful for what I have. There was someone in my energetic hygiene class last night who said, every time I feel like I want something and I feel stuck, instead of acknowledging, oh, you must have been stuck as a child, I shame myself for being stuck or trapped. Like, why are you creating an illusion of stuck and trappedness for yourself? You should just be grateful for your life. And I said, whose voice is that? And she's like, my parents, they went through the Holocaust.
Mm.
And in the Holocaust, they did not have anything that she has. So she lives with this like frustrated survivor's guilt of never being really allowed to want more than what she has, because what she has, she should be grateful for. And
Right.
that's a really trapped reality.
Yeah, and that makes it really hard to make the decision to allow yourself to receive what the universe is offering. And we end up saying no to ourselves,
Yeah.
no to the possibility, no to the opportunity that's literally right in front of us. But how could I take this if they didn't have it? I can't. So then I say no. And in some ways, the power of decision goes in both ways, right? Because decision is so powerful, it can build us up and create successful businesses and beautiful relationships and all kinds of wild experiences. And on the other side of that, when it's coming from that place of martyrdom, when it's coming from that place of victimhood, and it almost seems like we're making a choice because I'm saying no. I'm
Mm.
saying no. I'm making some kind of choice here, but actually it's spiraling into old patterns. And I love the way you termed it the shrine of my old pain.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
something about that. There's something about that. Every time we presence it, we're bringing it into this moment when it was something of the past. And in this moment, we have the possibility to make a decision that offers us some fresh new beginning. Every moment is a fresh new beginning.
Yeah. And an antidote for the frustrated coping style we learn is shifting every single can't to a won't, because then you are taking back the power of the decision.
Love that. Love
Every
that.
single can't. And I have not consciously, I might have subconsciously, but I have not consciously said can't in a few years. That word has been totally taken out of my vocabulary, because why do we say can't? Because we don't really want to claim our dominance over our power of co-creation. Why? Because there still might be like a shrine to the pain of, oh, I wasn't able to then, so I'm going to continue to perpetuate that pattern subconsciously. So let's say for example, it's a lot easier to say, I can't go to that wedding to the next month than to say, I won't go to that wedding next month.
Mm,
It's a lot easier to say, I can't come tonight than to say,
right.
actually, I decided not to,
Right.
right?
Wow. Wow.
And
You can
that's,
hear the ring of the power that motivates where it's coming from. It's like the can't is I am a victim of the circumstance and what am I supposed to
yeah,
do? And I won't, or I'm not going to be able to make it with the full sentence, without justification, without all the other things that we pacify the space, soften it a little bit because we're over concerned with like how the other person's going to receive it. Just say it how it is.
yeah. And Sam says this, and another one of the teachers that I've learned from shared this with me as well, which is feels like a really deep universal knowing, which is that won't is a lot closer to will than can't
Mm,
is. So if you can really own your no, it's a lot easier to own your yes. If you know that you can close your closings of yourself, it's a lot easier to know, and you have the power over that. And people can't step all over you and all of that. Then you also know that you can open your openings when you choose to. And that's a really, really, especially for people who've been through, whether it's developmental trauma, the frustrated defense mechanism that we're talking about, or big T trauma, when someone's been through violations of sorts, whether it's bullying or sexual abuse or physical abuse or emotional abuse, right? If we know that we can safely say no, and that we can say, no, I actually won't do this now. and beyond people pleasing and beyond any of that, then we also, when we say, we can also assert our will and say yes. And I want to talk about, I know we both have so many stories of times that we made decisions and how powerfully energy started to flow in the directions of all that we wanted, whether it was a decision to say no to something or a decision to say yes to something. And of course, when we're saying yes, we're always saying no to something else, which is why we sometimes choose the limbo space. But before that, I want to just share something that I tell my clients and myself that's really helpful for me is that your indecision is also your choice.
Yes.
Limbo is also a choice. Unclarity, fuzziness means that there's something that you're not willing, that you won't see, that you won't look at, that you won't address. And sometimes I have a client who says, actually, I won't feel my pain yet. And you know what usually
Mm.
happens? The next hour or the next day or so, they choose to free themselves. They choose to get back into flow because the decision creates the flow. The flow doesn't create the decision. The
Right.
decision creates the flow. The universe responds to our certainty. The universe responds to our trust in it. And when we have an instinct, when we have a knowing, when we have a desire moving in a certain direction, it's actually, and we spoke about this in other podcasts, but it's actually the Hashem, the universe, the creator, putting our instinct is our own version, and I'm going to say these Hebrew words and translate it into English, of Ruach HaKodesh. It's our
Yes.
own version of prophecy, of divine intervention moving through us and allowing us to know the universal knowing that we could have the thing that we want. But before we go into those stories, we really need to talk about self-trust because so many people struggle, so many of us struggle with trusting ourselves to decide.
Right. And then when I struggle with the trust, I leave the decisions to be made for me by others, by my parents, by society, by culture. I become a sheep in the herd. And then I also use that as a way for this illusion of it's not my fault. It's not my fault. If I didn't make the decision, then it's not my fault. And so then hands off, no responsibility, and blame. It's her fault. She's the one who told me to do it. It's the age old interaction with my parents where it's like, oh, but she told me to do it. And it's like, really? If she told you to jump off the bridge, would you jump off the bridge? You know, that sort of,
Yeah.
and that's like in a very adolescent way is the deepest understanding that it's if you want to be a victim to someone else making the choice for you or just following along without mind or creating this illusion that by not making the choice I didn't make a choice but I really did because it's going to be made for me by the universe, not by the universe but by circumstance. It's going to happen. The next thing is going to happen. If I'm in a relationship and the guy asks me to marry him and have indecision around that, his choice, which will deeply affect you, might be that he's going to step away.
Not available for that.
You didn't commit. You didn't say yes. You didn't make the decision. And so he's like, all right, well, if you're not ready or you don't want this, then I'm going to move along. And it might not be the thing that you want. You might want him so bad. You might be desperate for this. But if I don't stand in the decision and I leave it to the indecision or to the not making the avoiding the decision, then eventually it will happen.
You just brought up another point of your original question of where does this stem from? I was laughing as you were talking because I was imagining all of our listeners of all time standing in a room together with us, and we would ask them, how many of you grew up being afraid of being blamed? And I'm just curious for anyone listening right now, raise your hand. Raise your hand. Like your fear of being blamed and how that drives decisions. And I realized there's another reason you said, why do people stay in indecision? Also, because people are afraid of getting it wrong, quote unquote.
Yes.
Because growing up, I just literally felt a relief in my body, even in saying that to the world.
Mm.
People are afraid of getting it wrong. People are afraid of choosing the wrong thing. And this is also very societal, very cultural. A lot of my clients experience this. A lot of people grow up with black and white thinking, especially around like values and morals get very intertwined. There's a Hebrew saying, Shiva Panim LaTorah, which means there are 70 faces or ways to translate the Torah, or most people listening here know what that is. And if people are following a certain set of rules or religious obligations, then really understanding that there's so many different ways beyond right and wrong to understand things. And right and wrong is also a protection in our society. It's also in some ways comes from fear. And of course, there are things that we learn. There are things that are inherently, objectively moral and not. And besides for that, there is so much gray area. But in our world, we're so afraid to live in the mystery, to live in the liminal space, to live in the not knowing, that instead we live in the opposite of that, which is the limbo, the indecision. And
Mm.
we're actually doing the same exact thing that we're so afraid of. So, in some way, the antidote to not knowing is not knowing. In some way,
Right.
the antidote to limbo is liminal space. In some way, the antidote to not being there yet is the nothingness. And when we can surrender into that as opposed to being in the freaking frenzy of that, it really creates such a peace inside of our being because I can decide to not know yet, and that's my decision. There have been times where I really deeply wanted to move to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And there's such a like strong, there's so much strong work happening in the US. Like my clients are making powerful, 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 powerful soul movements, deep healing. Like the things that are happening are unbelievable. And I wonder, not in a people pleasing or a martyr way, but in a real way of, I can honor my wanting, but I wonder if there's more work for me to do here. I wonder if there's more here. And that means that I'm in the liminal space, I'm in the not knowing, but I don't feel indecisive. I'm not struggling with it. It's not hard. I don't feel stuck. I don't feel trapped. I'm just in, and there's that space that you could be in where you haven't decided and you're still not stuck. You haven't decided and you're still not in a frenzy. You haven't decided and you're still not frustrated. You haven't decided and you still trust yourself. Because trusting ourselves is not only about trusting ourselves and getting it right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Trusting ourselves is even when it doesn't go the way we think our mind thinks it should go, we don't abandon ourselves. And how do we build trust with ourselves or others? By trusting ourselves and others. And if something doesn't happen in the way we want it to go, then we repair with ourselves and others. How do we repair? It's we return to ourselves and others and say, I see how that happened, or return to ourselves most of all. I see how that happened and I still trust you. I still trust your knowing. I still trust your journey. I still trust the divine. I still trust the master plan. And I have a friend who recently was in a relationship with someone who wasn't kind to her. And she called me. She's like, I finally made the decision to leave this relationship, but my self trust is forever gone. I trusted myself to get into this relationship, and now it's just gone. It's burnt, it's perished. Self trust is not only when you make the choice that your mind thinks is the right thing for you. Self trust is understanding and trusting deeply in your soul's journey, like we spoke about last week on the podcast, and deeply in your sense to keep trusting yourself again, trusting yourself again. And I led this woman in the group last night. She said, but how do I know when there's two choices?
Mm.
Well, actually, how do I know when there's two choices what to do? How do I somatically figure that out? And I gave her a practice that I would be happy to model with you if you'd like to.
Yeah.
Cool.
Ready for that.
Cool. So let's do it. And for whoever's listening, you can really follow along and take this with you. I think that it's pretty practical.
Yeah.
So my first prompt to you is just to invite you to notice your feet on the ground and your
Mhm.
body in space. And just taking a breath. And if there's anything in your body that needs a little movement or shaken out, just let it move a bit. Just take a really deep breath. Good. And then I'm going to ask you a question, which is, where does your knowing live in your body right now in this moment? Now, before you answer, I'm just going to explain to our audience, because we're also in front of an audience, that the reason why I asked, where does your knowing live in this moment, or where does your knowing live today, is because your knowing can actually move day by day. So before you do this exercise, it's important for you to find your knowing. And it might be in your heart, it might be in your belly, it might be in your solar plexus, it might be in your genital area, it might be in your root. There are all different places where you might find the knowing, and different circumstances have different knowings. People say that when they sense their soulmate, they feel like a pull from a specific part of their body that they might not ever sense again before or after in that part of their body. And when they make decisions in other places, they feel they're knowing somewhere else. So just wanted to share that. And then coming back to you, honey, where do you feel your knowing today in your body?
I'm feeling it upper abdomen.
Yeah. And how does it feel?
It's just where I sense light and energy right now. When I looked, it was almost like an outside looking in. And when I looked at myself, that's where the glow
Mm.
was coming from.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Great. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you a few questions. Okay. And I want you to sense if that place in your body contracts or expands when I ask you the question. Okay. So first I'm going to ask, do you want to go to jail?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. And just notice that. Notice that feeling. Notice the feeling in your body, in that place in your body.
There's like this openness and this knowing. It's not part of
Okay.
my constellation. I'm not.
Good. 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 Yeah. There's more of a knowing than a yeah. And now notice this. What would it be like to go to Costa Rica this summer?
Yeah.
And how do you know that? Just track your sensation.
How do I know that that's bringing me delight inside of my
Mhm.
being?
Yeah. Track the sensation.
Hmm. It kind of rises up into my chest area with a spreading feeling. It's just this opening, spreading feeling in my chest.
Beautiful. Now I'm going to invite you to ask yourself a couple of questions. You can try it out loud and say it really slowly.
Like
Ask yourself a
opening.
yes or no question.
Okay.
Something a little less, maybe even something that you want to decide about. Maybe not, maybe you don't have a decision to make right now, but a yes or no question that's a little less obvious than jail or Costa Rica, because those two things I kind of know the no and the yes that you have inside of you. So a little less jarring.
Hmm. What's coming up is, are you excited about your art exhibition?
Hmm.
And so there's definitely this excitement, which also comes with a little bit of angst. So I feel a little bit of the contraction inside of that.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So you're noticing a little bit of nuancey space. Good. So now let's move into, and you can open your eyes,
Okay.
but I want to speak a little more to our audience, which is sometimes you really need to play. But
Mhm.
what's good about this is that if you play with the way that your body, right? I offered Hani like contraction or expansion, but it could be to you something is a dropping or a rising, or it could be the sensations move in different ways in different people's bodies, but really starting to get used to from little tiny things like, which shampoo should I use in the shower, really trusting the thing that you get pulled to. But what do I want to eat today, this or this, and really giving yourself the opportunity to move towards that first instinct, that the contraction or the expansion, the rising and the falling, is going to help you prime your being to start trusting it. And then that's how you build your intuition, because as you trust Your intuition actually offers you more and more and more clear information in more and more intense body sensations or more and more intense knowings. So then you can ask yourself the question, let's say, do I want to go to that wedding next month? And
That's
you
a good
might
question.
feel an initial contraction, right? And then you choose to go to the wedding anyway because you decide to go to the wedding anyway because I don't know, it's your family's wedding or whatever. You got to go. But the thing is when you go, what's really important is to tell yourself is I chose to go to this wedding. I decided to go to this wedding. I will go. But I won't deny the fact that I don't want to. And that
Mm,
doesn't mean that when I'm there, I won't be there with an open heart. But it's really important to start giving our body, to start giving ourselves congruent interpretations of what our body and our intuition is really feeling and sensing so that we don't continue to live our life like gaslighting ourselves or pushing down a part of ourselves. And that doesn't mean that you can't ultimately choose the thing that your intuition doesn't want you to do, but just remembering there's varying degrees of consequences to that, right? That one is pretty inconsequential for some people, but for some people, it might be incredibly consequential and it might be really much more important to trust the intuition than to please other people. For some people, it's not so consequential and there's an aspect of pleasing the self when pleasing the other. So there's a lot of gray area in this space. But the more you really can start speaking the language of your individual body, the more you can start to trust yourself.
yeah.
What's coming up
And
for
I
you?
think that something here also is trusting my intuition when it's guiding me to actually change my mind.
Yes.
I think so many times we get so steadfast and so attached to the decision that we made that now, like, on all costs, we're the one who made the decision. Now we have to hold it until eternity.
The
No.
end of time.
Yes. If something, now I made the decision, let's say, to start this thing, but now that I started it, something else is coming through. And I wouldn't have gotten to this place of understanding it until I made the decision that came prior to this one. And the way that I continue to trust is like trust begets trust. So I trusted myself to make this decision, but now my intuition is guiding me a little bit differently. Can I
Yeah.
trust that to be true also? And
Yes.
so that means I might change my mind. I might make a drastic change actually by changing my mind. But if I'm truly trusting and I'm truly in that place, then I can trust and allow that to be the intuition that's guiding. And so
Yeah.
it might end up looking like a totally different thing. I started out on my journey. I thought I'm going in this direction. Actually, I'm not. I'm doing a really big K turn into a totally different direction. And that's where I'm headed now. And then whatever will happen. I think that we have to remember that trusting, trusting in ourselves, trusting in the decision what we're making, and trusting in the changing of our mind.
Yes. So much. Yes. And another point that I want to share, Heather Parody, who I've done some other podcasts with, she's just the best. But she once shared with me this story of somebody who describes limbo in a really great way. Somebody can either choose to stay at the bottom of the mountain and walk around that path or choose to climb the mountain. But if you're choosing not to climb the mountain, you're choosing to stay at the bottom of the mountain and walking on that path. And I think that there's something in that space where it's like you can choose, you don't have to choose to climb the mountain. It's not a commandment. You don't have to. There's no right or wrong. You can live a beautiful life doing whatever you want. Choose your own adventure. Namaste. Yeah, namaste. But if you are choosing to climb the mountain, choose to climb the mountain.
Yeah.
'Cause it's the only way that you're going to reach the place that you want to reach. And sometimes we do need to take the action first before we have the proof of the results of the action. And that's called faith
Yeah.
because a possibility and the power of decision is the possibility and the power of faith.
Yeah.
Faith in ourselves, faith in Hashem, faith in God, faith in a higher power. The possibility of choosing to choosing to decide is choosing to have faith, choosing to walk a road not traveled yet in a world beyond right and wrong. And there's this quote from Terence McKenna that says, let's see if I can remember it. This is how magic is done. We hurl ourselves into the abyss and discover that it's a feather bed. And I feel
Mm,
like in some ways that's the power of deciding. It could sometimes feel like trustful, but then we land and we realize, oh, the whole entire universe is conspiring to, more often than not, to bring our decision into action. And when I remember when I moved to this home because I wanted to do more retreats and I wanted to do more work, and I couldn't even envision fully what it would fully look like or be like. And I definitely couldn't afford the monthly overhead of what that would be like. And I really took that plunge. I really took that trustful. Something inside of me pulled me. It pulled me into that space, and I couldn't even afford to buy the furniture that I wanted to furnish the home. And in 2 weeks' time, I'm taking 12 women on a really luxurious retreat at the tip
mm.
of Tzfat in Israel on a beautiful pilgrimage. And this home has brought me so much, and I have furnished it beautifully, and it's brought me so much abundance because when I stepped into a bigger space, the bigger space is it has the ability to be filled. And that's also something that we know if we're in if we're in a small space, whether it's actually physically or emotionally, depending on who we are and what our path is in the world, then there isn't that space for the blessing to fill it. And sometimes that means us going first, us deciding,
Yeah,
us choosing to decide.
that's the Nachshon energy again.
Yeah.
And I'm realizing when you say this story, I'm realizing that's when I became attracted to you to be your friend.
That's so funny.
I didn't know you well enough, and I
Yes.
saw that you're moving into a home, and I was like, who is this person who, in some way, and this is a powerful word, but has the audacity to trust herself this deeply?
Yeah.
That's the person I want to walk in this world with.
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
resonate with that kind of energy. I resonate with the audacity to trust ourselves and what's coming through fully,
Yeah.
fully, and without any attachment to what it's going to look like because we have no idea. We cannot know. And so there's something so powerful in that. And I think that that's when I started following you on Instagram and I saw that. I was like, this woman, man. I don't know what's going to be, but something because
Big epic.
undeniable attraction. Also, I want to say there's
Yeah.
undeniable attraction to
Yeah.
and what we put into this world when we allow it to ourselves that
Yeah.
creates the possibility in the universe, which is what we're here to offer, to
Yeah.
receive, both and. But yeah, I
Willingness, assertion of will is such attractive energy. It
so
really
attractive.
brings, it's so magnetic. It's the magnetic side of the magnet. And indecisiveness is actually the repellent side of the magnet
Yeah.
often. And
Yeah.
we all oscillate between those two states. There's no shame in those places, but the more we can really step into the power of our will. And why don't we want to own our will? We usually just don't want to be blamed. We don't want to be wrong. We don't want to disappoint other people. And when we can step into that space where we're less afraid of what other people think and more afraid of not following our soul's journey, that's when the like, choo, like, oh, the whole universe is another level unlocked. And
Yes. Yes.
there's
Yes.
something so exciting about that and so revitalizing about that and so healthy about that. And I want to also say there is very strong decision in the way that I lead in terms of deeply trusting what's coming through me and Hashem and the divine and myself when I'm leading in retreat spaces or in sessions with clients. And a good leader will, I believe, and what I've seen from the people who I learn from is will do two things. One is deeply trust themselves, and two is deeply lead you back to trusting yourself. Less advice and more, ooh, where's your knowing in your body? How can we expand your knowing? How can we bring your knowing from a whisper to a roar? How can we lead you to trust yourself even if you make mistakes? How can we help you love yourself even when you have made mistakes? Those are really profound. And I remember once on a retreat, I said something that might have been really risky for someone's defense. They had a very strong defense mechanism around something, and I said something directly, and I said it in a strong way, which I do. And somebody told me after, they're like, "Wow, that was brave." They were a therapist or a coach, and they told me after, "That was brave." I would have felt really afraid to say that to that person. I would be afraid that they would just walk out. That person was deeply grateful that I said it, and it shifted something for her exponentially. But what you just said was, she used the word, she said, "It's blasphemous." And there's something in that space of deciding, of being willing, of stepping into that space that people could really think is audacious, blasphemous. Even people can call you delusional.
Yeah.
And in the Wicked movie, there's a song that says, "How can I make you understand? You're having delusions of grandeur. I'm through with accepting limits because someone said they're so." And when I'm not going to keep singing, but what I will say is that the power of decision is not allowing the limits of our mind, the limits of society anymore to hold us back from asserting our will and having what we want. And that doesn't mean that there isn't a creator with a master plan whose divine plan is so much greater than ours. But we are also co-creators, and we have to remember that and bring back, we're not victims to our life. We're not stuck. And when we can really remember that, we learn how to allow ourselves permission to live fully alive. And I want to talk to you about ways that you've made decisions. What are some ways you've made decisions that have brought together that energy for yourself, honey?
I feel like I definitely live in that frequency.
Yeah.
And I definitely experience that every time, simple things like a decision to say, I'm going to take my entire family to Israel for Sukkot. And my husband, who plays the more tapped into reality, I tend to be a little bit more adventurous in the way that I believe and in the way that I think that things could be. He's like, how are we going to do that? I was like, I don't know, but I know that this is what's meant for us. And day in and day out, things appeared in front of us, serendipitous experiences and interactions that allowed us to get to that experience and have the most gorgeous time in Israel with my whole entire family. And we figured it out, and it worked out, and it was gorgeous, and it was memorable, and it was all the things that if I would stay within the limits of what is perceived as possible would never allow it to me.
Never.
The faith aspect plays such a huge role in trusting if there's this urge that's coming up, if there's an intuition that's telling you, take your family to Israel, go, go, say
Yeah.
it, speak it. Step one is speak it into the world.
Yeah.
As soon as we take it from the thought inside of our mind and we put it into words, it becomes tangible. We start to create a reality that's possible by speaking it, because so long as it's in our head, we have all of our parts that are fighting. No, yes, maybe, put it out. This is what I desire. This is what I want. I want to take my family and we are going to do this. It came from I desire to we are going to having the experience that we had. So, and so many things in the same trajectory. Even my birthday now, I did not have, except for a photo shoot that I did prior, which I knew that was going to be a part of this. I didn't really have any of my pieces of art yet. I didn't.
Tell
But
them
what
about
did
your
I do?
birthday.
What
They
did I
don't
do? Huh?
Tell them about your birthday. Tell them what you're
So my birthday was over Passover, but this is my third year doing an art exhibition in honor of my birthday and creating pieces that really embody my experience and what I'm going through, what I've been through, and honoring my pain and my celebrating my growth and all of those kind of things. And it ends up being a very mixed medium experience. And this time it's called Shattered Vessels, the Art of Detachment. And it's honoring the soul of my baby that came into this world for came into my body as a soul and left before it had the opportunity to be here. And so very motivated by that and motivating that soul. And I put out the invitation. I
Yeah.
just put out the invitation. I did not have the things in order. I didn't. But I said, I am going to make this happen. I'm going to make the decision. And with
Yeah.
the power of the decision comes all of the inspiration that is creating all the magical pieces that are going to be on display. Did I
Yeah.
know what it was going to look like? No, I didn't, except for the photo shoot that was a previous manifestation that was very similar, where I was like, I need to take this photo shoot. And then I was like, okay, so what does the costume look like? And what is the embodiment? And how is it going to be? And where are we going to do it? And all those things. Once you make the decision, then you can allow for the unraveling. I think of it as a valve. And
Yeah.
every time I make the decision to say yes, I pull a lever and it opens up and the water flushes down to the next valve. And then I say yes again, and then I pull that lever and the water flushes down and it goes to the next point. It's like I keep opening up space for the possibility by making the decision to take responsibility for the desire that's coming through, for the thing that's asking to be expressed, for
Yeah.
the intuition. I don't know why I'm doing this. Do I fully understand why it is? No, but I know that there's a desire inside of me to create, and there's a desire inside of me to share what I create. And so I'm going to do that. I'm just going to do the thing.
Yeah.
It's funny. I'm going to just go back for a second. When I had my miscarriage, I had shared it on social media. And I was spending the summer upstate, just really spending inward time. And sometimes I went to the pool and swam with my mother and my cousin. And so my cousin came up to me and she's like, I wouldn't really know what to say, but I know that you shared this publicly. So I want to just offer you my support and my love and my condolences for your experience. And I was like, oh, thank you so much. And we like shared a really warm hug. And my mom's like, wait, how did she know? I was like, oh, because I shared it on social media. And she kind of had this reaction like, "Oh, everyone has to know all the things. You have to put all it, like this kind of like attitude. And I was like, I'm not even going there because you either get it or you don't. It's cool. We don't have to agree and see things the same way. It's totally fine. And then we would paint every Wednesday as we do. So we did it upstate too. And I came over on Wednesday and I started talking about this vision of starting to put piece ideas together and like thoughts about what I can do to honor the soul of my baby. And she's like, oh, I wouldn't have said anything because I don't want to make you feel sad, but I had a dream. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. She's like, yeah, what happened was this woman called me out of the blue. I don't really know her. And she was like, I just want you to know that I read the thing that your daughter put out about her miscarriage and had an experience about 8 years ago that I could not settle inside of me. I couldn't find the healing. I couldn't find the resonance. I couldn't find the place to find solace inside of me. But when I read what your daughter wrote, it offered me so much deep healing and I feel so settled in my experience. When I can honor the part inside of me, the intuition inside of me that both wants to create and wants to share, I don't need to know what the outcome is going to look like. I can trust that if the desire is to write my story and put it on social media for whatever reason that I can't necessarily fully describe, which I've learned has also offered me a lot of healing personally, but there's something in it that offers something to the world. And
Hmm.
if I could really, like you, kind of take on this house, not knowing what it's going to be, but to be in the savoring of the impact that it's offering by honoring it to ourselves. I think that that's the point I'm trying to make. What I'm trying to say is that if I can trust my intuition and I
Hmm.
can trust the feeling that it's connected to, which is for me, creating and sharing, that the outcome and the impact is beautiful because I am here in alignment with my soul. I'm here making the decision to take responsibility for the thing that's coming through me and own it and show it and bring it. It's like for me and for you. And again, for me, for you, for you, for me, this infinity loop of what we are in community and what happens when we stand firm in the decisions that we make, in the decisions that come from that impulse that's inside of us that is our intuition. And
Yeah.
again, if the decision changes, great. But while I'm here, let's go with it.
So beautiful. One more facet, and then I think we're ready to close, is about mental health diagnoses and how confusing they can be for people, and in some ways, how limiting. For some people, receiving a diagnosis can be really relieving because it can feel like, oh, there's a name to something that I'm going through, whether physical or emotional. But what happens is that it can really limit the power of will and the power of will in healing. And of course, spiritual bypassing is using spirituality to bypass how we really feel is not helpful and doesn't work. So when we say, ooh, I'm not really sick or I'm not really sad, that's not going to help the sick or the sad go away. But the power of healing in restoring and healing our will injury, or the power to our will, is unprecedented. And when I've seen and supported clients and myself to get out of hard, stuck, can't, won't paradigms, and it's created for them a life that they feel is worth living and beyond that. Because, and I'm going to use the word can't on purpose here, we can't get out of hard with hard, because then we're stuck in the loop of hard forever. It has to be easy. And if it still feels hard, it means cheat code here. It means that there's still more validation that we need to give ourselves, still more acknowledgement that we need to give our real feelings so that they can move through us, so that we can move on and live, so that we can use that energy and say, that shouldn't have happened to me. I wish that didn't happen to me, and use that energy to move forward as fuel, to move forward inside of our lives, to move into will, to move into decision, to move into deciding. And bless us all to heal on an individual and a collective level any injury to our will that we may have, so that we can live not confined by our thoughts, not confined by the perceived limits of society or our culture or our families, and not either confined by the perceived limits of the mental health world or the world of healing. And I've seen and I've healed, I've experienced healing in my miraculous healing in myself, both emotionally and physically, in ways that I could have never imagined, really, really, really integrating this teaching. So, depression, especially depression and anxiety, it's not a lifetime diagnosis. You can heal from it. And if you aren't, you can say, there's something, a part of me inside right now that won't. Because won't is a lot closer to will than can't is. And for whatever we really feel the universe has decided for us, because then we surrender and we say, I will surrender to the thing that's happening in my life, and I will choose not necessarily what I'm going through, but I will choose the way that I respond to it. I will feel my feelings. I will feel gratitude. I will say how I really feel. I will, I will, I will. So
Gorgeous. Gorgeous.
thanks, Khan.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everybody.
Have a gorgeous day.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.
We are so humbled and delighted to have you with us. Our podcast is Real Life in Real Time, where we embark on curious conversations that expand our awareness and capacity for all that is possible.
The Possibility of the Universe podcast is only possible because of you, our audience. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thanks so much for being here, and thanks so much for listening. I'm Connie. First and foremost, I am a believer. I am a wife. I am a mother of 6 beautiful children. I am the co-owner of Mimulo, luxury florist and event production company. I am a life coach working with both individuals and couples to empower them to step into their own possibilities in this universe.
Hi, I'm Rifki, and I love life. I love heart-centered living. I love to be curious, and I love to connect with all things. I started off as a social worker and developmental therapist, and now I work as a somatic and subconscious practitioner using modalities such as somatic healing, breathwork, body work, hypnotherapy, and some really magical and incredible quantum healing technologies. I work with individuals, couples, run retreats and courses using these modalities to help people find the most freedom, presence, aliveness, and embodiment inside of their lives. The ways to contact us are through my website, rivkygross.com. That is spelled RIVKY dash, the straight line dash, gross, GROSS.com. You can also follow us on Instagram, Connie at Muckhome Sanctuary, and myself at Rifky Gross. We are here for any and all questions and feedback through the contact form on the website, and we're so looking forward to hearing from you.